talk about prolapse. So fill us in on what prolapse is, and help us learn more.
Okay, so a prolapse is when one of your pelvic organs, your bladder, your urethra, your rectum, your uterus hangs into the vaginal vault or the opening of the vagina. So a lot of times people will notice a sensation of pressure or something pulling or a heaviness in their vaginal area, or they might see something, they might visibly see something that wasn't quite there before. And that's just the muscles of the pelvic floor are responsible for holding up the organs. So if there's any weakness or torn muscle that's supposed to be holding up the pelvic floor, any dysfunction in those muscles that do the lifting, the organs can actually fall and sag into the vaginal area.
It sounds very scary.
It is scary, or it sounds scary, but it's not as scary. There's different degrees of prolapse. There's very mild where you can see something up inside the vagina, and then there's very severe where it's hanging out of the vagina. It won't actually fall out of the vagina, but it comes out of the opening. That's a very rare instance. It does happen, but it's very rare that can occur. And then there's also in between. So there's in between the mild and the severe. Most people are not as severe as they think they are. They always think it's a lot worse, but it's usually not. And the very mild to moderate cases can be addressed with physical therapy to help strengthen the muscles. If there is something where there's a tear in the muscle, you can either learn how to use other muscles to compensate for that, and that also depends on the severity. If it's very, very severe, then surgery may be required. And then there are other tools as well that we can use working with the OBGYN that can help support the organs, because it's just about support. They're just not supported anymore, and they just need a little bit of support. So the support can be in the form of strengthening the muscles so that they do the work, or it could be surgery to fix that condition, or there's even something called a pessary that the OBGYN or your gynecologist can insert into the vagina to support the wall or the organ so it doesn't fall forward.
And that becomes a permanent.
It depends.
Okay.
It's different for everyone. Some people can use it just for exercising. Some people use it for an extended period. And that usually, when they use that, it's to delay surgery. So there are things that can be done to delay surgery, because surgery is very invasive and the recovery is very difficult, and surgery doesn't always fix the prolapse. So it's best to try everything before you go in and do some cutting to try to fix that. So some people, it can get better and reverse, and others it can just get better without 100% going back to normal. And some people, they actually learn how to use their muscles better, but the prolapse doesn't actually correct itself, but at least the heaviness and the feeling of the dragging sensation gets reduced. So it really varies based on the individual.
So it's kind of like the feeling of like your insides are falling out.
Correct. Yeah.
I've been there, unfortunately.
Oh.
So with prolapse, so can you recover from it, and does it get worse the more kids that you have?
That's a good question. A lot of people ask that question. But research indicates that the damage is done after the first one. So if you don't want to prolapse, don't have the first one. That's what they say. So if you do have prolapse after your first child, then going forward, it's just about maintaining it and not allowing it to get worse. Because if you don't do anything about it, you don't exercise, and you're using your body incorrectly, that's adding more downward pressure to the area. You're basically pushing it out more and more. That can make it worse. But if you learn how to use your muscles and use your body appropriately and learn some good exercises, then it's definitely doable to maintain it and delay surgery.
Yeah, I love that. Delay surgery, no surgery, if possible. So in terms of exercises, as postpartum sisters, we talk a lot about exercises and what's good and not good. And can you give just a couple of ideas of just some everyday movements that with prolapse to be more cautious of?
So something like squatting is usually not good for prolapse. And there's no absolutes here. I'm not saying never do this and never do that, or always do this and always do that, because it varies based on the individual. But something like squatting usually opens up the pelvic floor muscles and it adds a downward pressure, and things just move down naturally. But if a woman can learn how to do the opposite and contract the pelvic floor muscles and lift the organ while she does a squat, then the squat is possible, correct? Yeah, so if they're not doing that, then squatting would be one of those things where you should probably hold off on the squatting until you learn how to use your muscles correctly.
So a woman with prolapse would know when she was able to go back to squats, when she can lift and feel the lift of the pelvic floor.
Against the squat.
Right.
Correct. And you may think, well, I don't do squatting in general, but we do squatting every day. When we're going to sit down, that's a form of a squat. When we're going to stand up, we're coming up from a squat. When we bend down to pick up our children or go down to sit on the floor with our children, that's also a form of squatting. So knowing how to...
bathroom, right?
Exactly. The bathroom, which we do every day,
Right.
is a form of a squat as well. So being aware of when the downward pressure occurs is helpful to know, okay, these are the times when my organs are going to be moving down. Now I have to engage the muscles and try to prevent that.
Okay, great. Thank you.